Welcome, collectors and hobby enthusiasts. Thank you once again for joining me for another episode of Diecast Emporium. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the original Classic Construction Models, or CCM Caterpillar D10 track-type tractor. This version features a U-blade and single-shank adjustable ripper. Now, I said original because to date, in 1/48 scale at least, there are 4 variations of the Cat D10 that CCM has done. As I said, this is the original, released over 11 years ago. But if you would like to take a look at the newer version of the D10 that CCM has released, check out the link right here at the top of your screen, right about here. That will be a suggested link to the review that I have done of the newer version that has 2 exhausts, a different blade, and a 3-shanked ripper on it. So essentially, it's an entirely different machine, although it is still a Cat D10. So a little bit of history first before we get into the model review, as I always like to do with these classic machines. The D10 overcame the limitations of a normal drivetrain by introducing what is now the most recognizable part of Cat Dozers, the high drive system, or the high final drive sprocket, this right here. With the 19-foot wide blade, the D10 could push 35 yards of material and penetrate the ground at a depth of up to 70 inches with the single-shank ripper. With a V12 turbocharged Cat D348 engine producing up to 700 horsepower, the Caterpillar D10 was the largest dozer in the world when it was introduced in 1977. This dozer stayed in production from 1977 until 1986, when Caterpillar reintroduced the size and number designations in 1986 and 1987, the D10s became the new D10's. A little bit of confusion there, but actually, that's how the first D11s came about. All right, so for the model, by CCM, 1,500 of these were made back in 2009. It took over 2 years from conception to release of research and development on this piece. They originally retailed for just shy of $190. As I said, it's made of 1/48 scale diecast. If you were to measure this, it measures 6 inches long, 4.5 inches wide, and 4 inches tall. All right, let's start the model review now. We'll start off with the details on the model, and then we'll go into the functions. So as you can see, it has the late 70s trade dress with the Pac-Man or Block C logo and that kind of highway yellow paint that Caterpillar had back then. And that's replicated very well with the paint that CCM used on this. I think it's pretty close. Some collectors say it's a little bit off, but it's close enough for my liking anyway, so take that for what it's worth. You can see the high final drive sprocket, which again looks very, very good. All of the tracks and the track shoes have bolt detail on them. If we turn off the table for just a minute. While we're on the subject of the tracks, they are spring-loaded, which means you can make them talk if you want to. Underneath, the tracks have a bar here, so you can make them traverse back and forth if you want to. Now, this dozer was before CCM started doing serial numbers on the models and on the original equipment brochures, so this comes with no paperwork, no brochures or anything. So if you buy yours and you don't have the brochure or the serial number, don't worry, this one never came with one to begin with. Underneath, you'll find the CCM logo. Once again, a better look at the tracks, which will roll on any surface with friction, as I demonstrated before. Other details on this model before we go on to functionality include hand and grab rails, which are thin and look to scale, an open engine bay, which looks very good with some different components on it. The cab detail, if you look up close, is also very realistic, but again, it's always hard to capture a closed cab machine's interior detail, particularly when the doors do not open. On the back, you can see that there's a windshield wiper. On the right-hand side of the machine, there is a fire extinguisher. One of the easiest ways to distinguish a first-generation CCM D10 from the second releases, or the second gens that were made several years later, is that the first versions had a single exhaust stack, which you can see here, and then the second releases had the dual exhaust stack, and the exhaust stack, rather, has a hole, as you can see there, that is all the way see-through, which is a nice touch. So that's the detail on the model. Let's turn our attention to the functionality. I love the functionality on this dozer because it's actually really, really well done. First off, we'll turn our attention to the blade. Right now, it's about as low as it will go without forcing anything. You can raise it up to a decent height. That's not bad. You can also tilt it, again, without forcing anything. That's also not too bad. So the front of the machine functionality passes with some pretty decent remarks and pretty decent grade. You can also see the wear pattern on the bottom of the blade. So let's put that back down. Again, one of the more interesting aspects of this one is the fact that it has a brass pin at the back, and that allows you to adjust the height of the ripper shank. So right now, we'll take it out, and you can remove the ripper shank altogether, but let's say you want to put it slightly higher. So let's see if this will cooperate, and let's put it up to here. So we'll put our pin in, make sure your hole's lined up, and as you can see, the fit and finish is pretty decent, and it will hold whatever height that you choose to adjust it. So with our ripper tooth height set, how does the actual ripper perform and function? Well, it lowers very, very well and to a very good depth. In fact, if I move the machine around, you can see just how far down it goes beneath the table. If I raise it back up, it also has a pretty good range of tilt, as you can see here with the amount of cylinder that's exposed. So for a CCM model that's 11 years old, produced in 2009, just about 2010-ish, it retains a lot of its functionality. The paint really hasn't deformed any on it. It looks really, really good. And those are some of the many reasons why, taking into account the 4 different variations of the Cat D10 that have been made by CCM to date, that this is one of the more sought after and one of the ones that's the most hard to get, despite there being 1,500 allegedly in circulation. All right, so before we close out this video, I wanted to show you a few other Caterpillar D10s that are out there in 1 to 50 scale. Again, this is 1 to 48 scale, but as I've said before, 1 to 48 scale and 1 to 50 scale are really compatible with each other. The differences are really negatable. You can't really tell. So let's move this one. We're going to start off with a very bare bones, kind of entry-level model is a term I like to throw out and use a lot. This is a Norscot Caterpillar D10. Originally, Ertl first made this casting, and then a few years later, when Norscot became the sole owner of distributing and producing cat models on a mass scale, they took this tooling over. Pretty much did nothing to it other than add their name underneath, which you can read right there, Norscot Group Incorporated. Rubber tracks were pretty standard back then, unless you were paying for a really high-end piece. So that's the D10N. We're going to fast forward about 7 or 8 years to 2006, 2007, when Norscot released, originally, the D10T, part of their collector series back then. This version is the updated Diecast Masters one. Very little difference between the two. This version has, obviously, the operator in the cab. But honestly, between the Norscot version and the Diecast Masters version, really the operator in the cab is honestly the only difference. Norscot did 2 versions of this. They did it in what I call the anti-glare, which is the black finish up on top of the engine and on top of the cab. And then they also did it in mostly a yellow later on. And this is in the 2007 era Cat Power Stripe trade dress. The last D10 I will show you, we let this spin around one more time, is the newest one that you can get, at least in 1 to 50 scale, and that's the Diecast Masters Caterpillar D10 T2. So you've seen the D10T. This is the D10 T2, which is really fun to say. Also by Diecast Masters in their Highline series. And this is a pretty functional model, and this is one that really displays well because it has a lot of detail on it, such as the updated safety railings for the new mining package, the fire suppression system, all of the hydraulic lines going to the ripper and to the blade, and, just to top everything off, it has 2 opening engine compartments on either side, which you can pose the machine having some standard maintenance done on it. So, that'll conclude this video. You guys let me know down in the comments section below which of these D10s that you've seen in this video you either want to add to your collection or that you already have in your collection. And also, would you like to see a new D10 produced in the near future that maybe has the new modern Hex logo on it that Caterpillar introduced just about a year or so ago? I'm Tommy with Diecast Emporium. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, take care. I'll see you in the next review.